There you go.
All right, we are now live. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Vermont State Senate's Committee on Institutions. I am your host, Joe Benning, the chair of this committee. I represent the Caledonia County District. We have along with us today Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator Parent from Franklin County, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Senator McCormick from Windsor County. Our special guest today is Representative Emmons, and we'll be talking with her more in just a moment. We are continuing our conversation from yesterday where we did a walkthrough of the language on the Capitol bill. My understanding is the Capitol bill has actually made its way over to us, and if I'm right, it's H438, the official title. Thanks for that, Representative Emmons. You've had it for what, 3 months, and we're going to have it.
They had to take them 6 months to do what we do in 3 weeks.
Yeah, but we laid the groundwork for you.
Representative Emmons knows all about this, so I don't have to give her the spiel on what witnesses are supposed to do when they get here. But for those of you that are joining us on YouTube, I always remind folks that we are trying to get down to the grassroots, not use vernacular that is very common to us, so that any witnesses testifying will explain literally from scratch, so the folks that may be listening in can have some general idea on what's going on. In addition, Representative Emmons, we have 3 new members on this committee, one of whom is a former member of the committee. Another one is a brand new legislator. So we do try to keep things as easy as pie to make sure everybody is on the same page. And I know you have that same situation over on your side of the building. But my plan was to have Becky bring up the language in a screen share, and we were going to walk through with you why it is your committee did what it did. This may be part 1 of a 2-part conversation because there's a lot to cover here. We took a little over an hour yesterday just walking through the bill, but we didn't have the opportunity at the same time to grill you personally on why you did what you did and joke with you about why you did wrong. I anticipate that conversation will take at least an hour. So it being late in the afternoon, and I do understand you may have to leave us for a roll call. When that happens, committee, we can take a 10-minute break or whatever and see if we can't get Representative Emmons back. But it being fairly late in the afternoon, if she has to leave at some point a little bit later, is that a magical ding that tells us that you have to be on the floor?
No, it's from someone else.
Coffee break.
No.
All right. Having said all that, Becky, thank you. We're screen sharing, and if we could increase that size a couple of notches. We're going to walk back through the language, and Alice, I'm assuming you know all of this basic explanation and can take it from scratch, but you tell me if you need any guidance.
Okay, well, for the record, my name is Representative Alice Emmons, and I'm chair of the House Corrections and Institutions Committee. I was thinking at first possibly just working off the spreadsheet, unless you want to go through the language at the same time, because the language of the bill does follow the spreadsheet pretty carefully. It goes hand in hand, so we can do that.
Well, just so you know, we have been going through the spreadsheet trying to follow your committee's testimony as we've been walking through all that.
Mm-hmm.
This is really your show this afternoon. I'm going to leave it to your discretion as to which you would prefer to go through first.
Well, let's just take it with the language because the first sections are pretty clear, particularly the section 1 just gives the authority of, well, not the authority, but it lays out that we are bonding for 123, but we also have the reallocations. So the whole appropriations 127 million plus, and not more than 70 million will be appropriated in FY22 of the biennium. And then that the second year that there is a, I don't usually look at this language, that there's a budget adjustment bill that we set up for the process. in the interim. Because we're doing a 2-year budget for the new folks on the committee, this is the only budget in state government that is a 2-year budget. So when we first went from a 1-year budget to a 2-year budget, I think it was a good 6 or 8 years ago, maybe 8 years ago now.
Actually, it was 2011
and-
because that was my first year on institutions.
Yeah, it was 10 years ago. Oh, we wanted a process as a midterm check-in. So we put in place a budget adjustment. So come next January, there will be another capital bill or another capital budget proposed by the governor, and it will just make adjustments. Most of these projects that you see in FY22, most of them will stay there come next January. Some may change, but not drastically. FY23, again, the bulk of those projects will stay there. There may be a few changes, tweaks here and there.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a clarification?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, when you refer to a budget adjustment, that's the budget for the second biennium. It's not a budget adjustment to what we're doing this year.
We're doing a 2-year budget, so we have
Yes.
FY22 and FY23. So come next January, we will have another capital budget proposal that is a budget adjustment for FY22 and FY23. It's for the next session for this biennium.
So there's a budget adjustment bill, and then there's the second year budget.
No,
That's
it's
two separate.
only,
Okay.
it's only a budget adjustment. We are putting in place right now a 2-year budget. So
Okay.
we are working within our bonded capacity of 123 million that we can bond for these next 2 years.
So the budget adjustment to which you refer is the 2023 budget.
Not necessarily. There could be money from FY22 that gets adjusted as well. Because the project may not be moving forward, or they may want to stop the project, so that frees up that money to be used.
But it's the same bill.
It's the same budget. The governor will propose a budget adjustment in January, and we will draft up another bill. It's the same budget. We do a 2-year budget.
No, I understand that. I'm just talking about what the term, I had thought that there was this year's part of the 2-year budget, and then the following year's part of the 2-year budget. And I'm just want to make sure that the budget adjustment is referring to where we're going after July 1, 22.
It incorporates both fiscal years, the budget
Yep.
adjustment.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So we have in this particular 2-year budget, we are bonding for what the CDAC committee, which is the Capital Debt Affordability Committee, makes a recommendation to us in the fall on our capacity for bonding. And their recommend was 123 million number for a capital budget for 2 years. We also have what we call reallocations. And those reallocations are from previous budgets, previous projects that we had appropriated dollars for. That, number one, the project is complete, and there could be a balance on the bottom line of the project. So that money gets reallocated. They need authority in order how to use those dollars. So those dollars get reallocated. A project may not go forward. That money gets reallocated. Because it's bonded dollars, it gets reallocated in this budget, in this bill. So that's why you see 127,378,000, because there's about $4 million in project balance balances or projects that didn't go forward. And we'll get to that part of the budget, the bill later on. So that's why it's 127 and not 123. So the second section of the bill pertains to buildings and general services. And this has been pretty straightforward in terms of what we have funded in the past. The bulk of these projects, we always do major maintenance for all of our state-owned buildings that are under the jurisdiction of buildings and general services. The same with the engineering and architectural cost. This is a cost that the capital bill's been picking up for the last 8 to 10 years, I would say. This is a cost that normally comes out of the general fund, but we've been picking this up because of the pressures on the general fund. And these are dollars that go for engineer and architectural costs that are directly related to the projects that we budget for in our bill.
Can we stop you there for a second? This topic seems to be an ongoing conversation about whether this element should be contained in the capital bill. You guys had any conversation about that?
Well, we've talked about that for a number of years, and we have, I forgot how many years ago, maybe Becky and Catherine can help with this. I think it was a good 4 to 6 years ago.
2013.
And it's been longer than that. Funny how time flies. We worked with Appropriations Committee with language to say that as of a certain date, the general fund will pick this up. And then we keep extending the date. And we do this in the back of the bill. We have to extend that date again.
Right, we saw that yesterday, but I'm wondering, why is it we keep deciding to extend the conversation?
Because we feel that in the working with our Appropriations Committee in the House, that there's a lot of pressure on the general fund. And our committee has, in the past, been willing to help our Appropriations Committees on the House side to help them with their budget obligations with the general fund. So that could be a different conversation over in your body. We want to bring this money back upstairs into the general fund, but with pressures that they're feeling, sometimes it just isn't attainable.
This seems to be one of those quirks that doesn't ever get fixed. It's a little uncomfortable, I guess, as chair of Senate institutions, that we are providing the salaries of folks. And I know we've kept a lid on it for all intents and purposes, limiting it to these folks in particular, but it's an awful precedent for the future to bring in somebody else at some point that the general fund has decided just can't be meeting that group of people that needs to be paid somehow.
Mm-hmm.
They
I
could
mean,
get
we feel
around
that
it.
we
They could
feel
get
the
around
same.
it, just throwing it into a project. You never know it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'd never know if they just threw it into one of the projects. We'd never know where it was. So
It's correct. It's part of the project cost.
But if you put it on your credit card, it's free.
well, when you say it's part of the project cost, the reality is it's not tied immediately to any one given project.
Mm-hmm.
It's an employee of the state that is carried forward in a budget process that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with paying state employees.
but they could just put it on that individual project.
That they could,
and
but
they
at
put
least
it
we'd be able to review the project and decide whether we can afford it or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just saying they could get around it. Sure.
Yeah. I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to red flag it and say we're continuing to look at this with crossed eyes. Let's put it that way.
Fine with me. Statewide physical securities, this is in all of our state-owned buildings, again, under BGS. And this goes like for card access to the buildings or panic buttons, door release buttons, those type of items. Statewide planning, reuse, and contingency. This has always been an ongoing line item. It allows BGS to do work in terms of planning where to locate some state employees, state offices. If they're doing construction in one building and they have to move the employees to another building for swing space, this is what this is used for. Also the contingency in case there's any budget overrides, any budgets, any projects that come in over budget, they can pull on the contingency fund for that. So we've always put money in for this particular line item. We have a few parking garages here that we own.
Want to fill those holes up in Burlington.
Yes, 108 Cherry's been ongoing. This is replacing these concrete slabs and beams, and this will complete this particular part of the project. It's a $16 million project.
Oh,
Complete this.
what a waste.
Gratuitous comments are going to be heard throughout this presentation for the folks that have never heard this before.
Oh, I think he's heard it before.
He has, but YouTube, we don't know who's out there.
Right. Montpelier maintenance of the interior historic finishes. This is really, we had testimony from our state curator, David Sheets, and we're really at the point with our interior part of the State House, just to keep up the regular maintenance of the building. You know, it's been closed here for the last year, but outside of that, the normal flow is there's a tremendous amount of use in that building, and our historic items that are there, we've done a lot of renovations in there since the late 70s, particularly the early 80s and the 90s, and then we've kind of backed off on this, and the building is just getting worn. And so we said we should really look at this as a yearly expense, and that's what my committee is thinking about, just to keep up the regular maintenance, historic finish, you know, look at the historic needs and make sure that items aren't getting worn, and just keep tabs on it and do that on a yearly basis, so it doesn't come to be such a big issue that then we have a big dollar amount that we have to deal with. The State House exhibition interpretation. This is telling our history to the public. This is something that we started last year. It does involve the Friends of the State House, and we've continued with that project. The Newport Courthouse replacement, its planning and design documents, we put in about 1.5 million last year to have BGS start looking at possible site acquisition. This is to replace two courthouses that are side by side in the center of Newport. BGS is looking at sites, and we are putting in $500,000 this year to go forward with some planning and design documents.
Wow. They don't need a courthouse in Newport. There's no trouble up there.
No, they're all someplace else, right? Aren't they in Franklin County or Grand Isle?
We do need a new courthouse in Grand Isle.
Yes, we do.
Oh, no, we're not going down that road. We've been down there.
We can put in Alberg this time, though.
Yeah, forget it.
The Asa Bloomer. This is a building that we took ownership of. I think when it became 20 years old, we entered into like a lease purchase agreement, and we ended up with ownership of this building. It's in downtown Rutland. This is major renovations. There's going to be a lot more money being put into this building. This one in particular there's a roof that's leaking, particularly around a skylight. And then there is also some sewer issues in the basement. So we're looking at sewer mitigation for that. The Springfield Southern Correctional Facility door control, we bumped this up I always get this confused. We bumped this up into the whole project in FY '22. The governor proposed 2.1 million FY '22 and 700,000 FY '23. We feel we can get this project done within the first fiscal year of '22. And the reason that we bumped it up, moved that 700,000 into FY '22, you have to move the offenders. And you're doing the whole facility, so the offenders are constantly moving, being being relocated. Let's just do that once and get it done instead of spreading this out over 2 years. So that's why we moved the 700,000 up into FY '22. That's what we've done for FY '22. FY '23. We've done some of these same projects that you can see as well on the spreadsheet. But then there's other projects that the governor proposed that we didn't start until FY '23. We asked the questions, could any of these projects be bumped up to FY '22? We asked that of BGS. Their response was, it's a resource issue. It's a resource issue within their department in terms of being able to get the projects out. They have a lot on their plates right now. The other part of the resource issue is sometimes you may think, well, I can bump up this 100,000 into like Brattleboro, the courthouse re-roof, but the next year you're looking at possibly $3 million to really do the project. We don't have the capacity within our 2-year $123 million to do that. So that's why it's in FY '23. Does that make sense to folks? Some of them we really did want to push into FY '22, but then you've got a year of doing nothing. So you've got the white, let me see here. It's sometimes easier to do it with the spreadsheet than it is language at this point. You've got the White River, no, I missed something here. The Waterbury State Office Building, that one's in FY '22 and FY '23. That one is the slate and copper roofing. This is the historic core. It is not the new part that we have done back in 2012, 2013, 2014. This is a historic core, the front of the Waterbury complex closest to the road. And it's replacing the roof, and it's going to be a very expensive project. And we want to get started on it. And it's a copper roofing, copper and slate.
Oh,
So it's not cheap.
you can't get out of those things. Once they're historic, we can't get out of them, can we?
That's right. So on C, we start with FY '23. And as I said, a lot of them cover what's already on the spreadsheet for FY '23. But then you're going to start picking up items that start with the White River Junction courthouse renovation. It's 1.5 million. And what that entails is right now that building with the brick facade, there's a lot of moisture coming in on that. The Brattleboro Courthouse re-roof, again, that's roof is coming to the end of life. And BGS is saying this should be the next courthouse we really start some major investments in. 32 Cherry, a parking garage, another one. This has got some of the same issues as 108, where the concrete is failing. And this is for planning, design, and construction for $865,000. 111 State Street, that is the back of the Supreme Court that also connects with the pavilion. It's where the Department of State Libraries used to be. There is HVAC system upgrades that are needed. There's a renovation of what's called the stack area. That is where there's a possibility of building a mezzanine there. And then, of course, an elevator. And this has been looked at over a number of years, trying to figure out how to use the space. The space is empty right now. It's called the connector because it's between the Supreme Court and the pavilion. And part of the thinking was there is staff of the Supreme Court that is not housed there at the Supreme Court building. And if we can renovate some of this area, some of those staff can come back in to be with the Supreme Court.
So is that where your committee is leaning right now? Because I was also under the impression that perhaps Ledge Council could move into that.
We're not talking about who's going to be using that space for anything at this point
Okay,
on the house side. I mean, that wasn't our intention at all. I mean, we didn't discuss it. It was part of renovating this empty space right now.
yep, okay.
120 State Street, the steam lines are leaking, and the steam lines are embedded within the floor slabs and the exterior walls, and those are starting to leak. And that has to be taken care of. So that's in FY23. The State House HVAC system renovation. This, we started discussions last year. We put in $500,000 to have BGS go out and figure out a plan on how we can best address removing the moisture from the State House, particularly during the summer months. No decisions have been made yet. And this also, when you start doing some major renovations for HVAC systems, I know at one point they were talking possibly of a summer boiler, but I think that may be off the table. You really need to start looking at relocating some of our legislative staff. So this is all sort of intertwined here. And the HVAC renovations, we have three different systems in a way. They were all put in at different times. We had a system, part of the building, the system was done during the 70s. And then we have another part of the building, the system was done like in the 80s and 90s. And then another part of the building was done later. So it's really hard to keep the airflow and the temperature and the moisture in control in the State House. So we're taking a bite at that bullet. We're taking a bite of the bullet and saying we're going to do it. The Rutland multimodal, it's another parking garage of sorts. This is, again, the concrete's deteriorating. Don't ever own a parking garage. So this is the same issue as 108 Cherry and 32 Cherry. Statewide 3-acre parcel stormwater planning. This is to deal with our stormwater runoff, which is part of our clean water requirements. There's 8 sites in BGS that, with our building ownership, there's about 8 sites there. So we're saying start the process of doing the 3-acre stormwater planning and design work for that, so we can meet our obligations. So that's it for the buildings and general services. And we didn't move money around too much. We just kind of rounded up or rounded down so that we took care of some of your workload.
Thanks a lot. You took it away from me, didn't you?
Yeah, now we're not gonna have anything to do for the rest of the
That's
session.
right. I knew you caught on. It took all those years to figure it out. You caught on and took it away. Is that you're doing, Alice?
A little bit. A little bit. Plus, we had some really odd numbers there.
I know.
But we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So the next section is the big section, human services. The first part is the secure residential recovery. This is the replacement of the secure residential in Middlesex, the state hospital step down. We're well aware of the trailers were put up there after Irene. Right now, those trailers house 7 beds, and we've been trying to replace them for the last 8 years, 9 years or so. We have put in to date about 4.5 million for this replacement. We thought possibly we'd have to purchase some land. But as it has worked through the process with the Woodside facility for our justice involved juveniles, there's now another plan in place to provide services to those juveniles. So Woodside, the building was closed. The administration had proposed last year in about February that we use the Woodside site for the new secure residential 16-bed facility. That didn't really get approved or given the okay to BGS to start any design work at that site until about this past November. So this 11.6 is to complete the project. And the goal is to begin construction on this 16-bed facility this summer is the goal. It still has to go through a CON process. BGS is still working with Department of Mental Health for their program needs. And we want to get this project done. It's 16 beds. It's secure residential is not at the level of the state hospital for your level 1 high acuity folks. It's after they've been stabilized, but they're still not stable enough to be returned to the community, and they need a step down facility. We worked with our healthcare committee on this. They had some reservations about this. 2 years ago, they were very, very supportive of going forward with a secure residential 16-bed. This year, they had second thoughts about it in terms of once this facility gets up and running, there'll be more pressure on the operating budgets, the general fund budgets for the Department of Mental Health. They're concerned that those dollars will go more into a state-operated facility and not so much into the community systems. So there's language at the end of the bill that the healthcare committee worked on, and we submitted it in the bill that would do a bed study within the communities to make sure that we don't overbill on state-owned and operated facilities, that we also look at the community systems for a whole mental health system of providing services. So that's where we are with the 16-bed secure residential. The next piece is replacement of the women's correctional facility. The administration put in 1.5 million to begin this work, $500,000 in FY22 and 1 million in FY23. What will happen with the $500,000 in FY22 is BGS will work with Department of Corrections to really see what their program needs are. There is also work being done with the Council of State Governments with our justice reinvestment in terms of correctional initiatives, policy changes to really stabilize our correctional population, both male and female. And there's also work, this is results of work on both of our ends a few years ago, where there was an RFP that went out from BGS and Department of Corrections to look at the feasibility in terms of how we move forward with replacing our correctional facilities, and in particular, the women's correctional facility. Do
you serve on justice oversight?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And who on this committee is there a new person on this committee at all? Has that been appointed?
Russ Ingalls is the new person, but I don't know who on this committee, if anybody on this committee is on that, because policy is handled by judiciary.
Yes, but institutions committee is listed as a committee that should have a person on justice oversight. So I don't know if your side has been appointed yet for justice
I believe
oversight.
so. I have not been told so.
Okay.
I don't think we've talked about it.
We've appointed our side. So, and I think, it was Senator Hooker, who was on there previously from Institutions Committee
Okay,
for that. The committee is listed as having a member on Justice Oversight.
I guess I better look into that.
Mhm. So,
Sorry to interrupt. I have to be in another committee at 3, so I'm wondering if Catherine can get sharing rights to share the screen.
Denise, can you give me sharing rights? I don't know if you can.
Trying to, but, oh, there you are. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll get you.
Thank you, Becky.
Can you see that? Is that big enough? Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Gee, I should have asked, Becky's not going to a House committee, is she?
we're still on the floor. As far as,
Senate committee.
yeah.
Okay.
So for the women's facility, we're also going to be receiving a report of that RFP that went out for the feasibility study. They contracted out with a contractor named Hawk, H-O-K.
Yeah.
And
we've heard from them, actually.
yeah, and their report of what they're going to put out 5 to 7 options, I think, in terms of how we can move forward with replacing our women's facility and our facilities. That
When
report,
they came to speak to us, they were telling us that it was only chapter 1 of their 2-chapter presentation to us. When they come back with that report, would it be wise to have both of our committees meeting at the same time with that discussion?
yes, and what I'm hearing, I just got dinged that the roll call is starting. What I'm hearing, it may be the 2nd or 3rd, is it the week, April 12th is the week I'm hearing that would be available.
Okay.
So we should try to set a
Yep.
meeting up. We also have language. I'm going to jump down to this and then I'm going to need to scoot over to my vote. We also put in language at the bottom of page 5 on D that of that 500,000, the DOC and BGS would determine the space and programming needs for any state-owned and operated women's reentry and correctional facilities. So there's thinking you may need just an incarcerated correctional facility for X number of beds, whatever that may be, and then a separate building facility, hopefully on the same site, for a reentry program for the women. So that's what that language deals with
Okay.
for that. And maybe I can just finish up quickly the the secure residential. We did put in language on C that it would be support, and we worked on this language with our healthcare committee, support for individuals who are being discharged from the psychiatric care facility. And that that there would be interior fit up, that the 16-bed facility would have 2 8-bed wings. So what they're going to do is design it with their administrative core. And then they're going to have 2 wings, 8 beds apiece. That would allow for separation of one of the wing from the main section of the facility if it's necessary. And both wings would serve as common clinical and activity space, and neither wing would have a locked seclusion area. And the facility would not use emergency and voluntary procedures. And then there'd be adequate outdoor space. This language was worked on very carefully with our healthcare committee and the Department of Mental Health, the Commissioner of Mental Health. and BGS.
The exterior, though, it is fenced in.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have to go because they've already passed me by, so I have to get there.
All right, committee, it is now 3:00. What would you like to do? Ask Alice to come back later this afternoon or reschedule?
Reschedule would be nice.
Do that.
I think we can do that.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, Alice, I'll get my lawyer in touch with your lawyer and we'll have you back. How's that?
Okay. It's great visiting. I miss you folks.
Yeah,
I
We'll
miss
see
you all.
again.
Yeah.
Say hi to all our friends on the other side.
All
Okay.
two of them.
Yes, I will. We will see
All
you
right.
later.
Thank you. Denise, you could take us off of YouTube, but hang around, everybody, for logistics.
Okay.
Um,
Can
So,
anybody-